With the confirmation of manual spaceflight for Starfield, the spaceships just got a lot more interesting. We now know for sure that we will be flying our own ship, designing and modifying it, and even getting into dogfights with enemy ships. Shortly after the big Starfield gameplay reveal, we got a few more interesting interviews which gave us further details about how spaceflight is going to work in the game. So let's go over what we know. We'll talk about spaceship design, construction, space combat, and exploration. Spaceship design. Todd Howard highlighted that designing our own spaceship in Starfield will be an in-depth and creative part of the game. We saw a top-down view of our space vessel, where we can change every part of the ship, weapons, thrusters, power supply, cargo capacity, and more. The layout is completely customizable, with many different in-universe brands and cosmetics to choose from. But it's not just for looks, because all these features will affect our ship's performance. During spaceflight, you will be able to transfer power between 3 different weapon systems, as well as engines, shields, and a grav drive, which allows you to jump away from danger. It seems to be some sort of warp drive, or something you can use to travel vast distances quickly. I won't go into them in too much detail because we are only guessing at this stage, but we see a few ship stats. The 3 weapon types, lasers, ballistic, and missile. Then we have hull strength, shield capabilities, cargo capacity, the number of crew, grav jump range, ship mobility, speed, and overall mass. On the subject of jump range, we get a bit more knowledge about how this will work when we examine the description for the Titan 350H3 fuel tank. Read the description. Whoops, I wasn't supposed to read that bit out loud. Spaceship fuel tanks store helium-3, which is used by the grav drive to perform a jump. Increased fuel capacity means you can jump further or more often before refueling. We see that our ship has a grav jump fuel level, and refueling our ships with valuable grav jump fuel will be a big part of Starfield. No doubt we can purchase fuel at space stations and planets, but perhaps we will also be able to manufacture our own at player-built outposts. Interestingly, we also see the type of fuel technology used in Starfield, helium-3. Helium-3 is a light, stable isotope of helium with 2 protons and 1 neutron. In our real world, helium-3 is a gas that has the potential to be used as a fuel in future nuclear fusion power plants. Nuclear fusion is when 2 atomic nuclei merge into one single heavier nucleus, converting some mass into energy. It's the same process that powers the sun, where hydrogen atoms are forced together under enormous heat and pressure to form helium. This is the opposite effect to nuclear fission, used in nuclear power plants. Fallout fans will be familiar with this technology, where atoms are forcefully split apart.
Oh, Rick, how could you? You and I, together we were one.
That was before, but now, time's splitting us up.
In a controlled environment. Humans are attempting to use nuclear fusion in our real world to provide clean power. This process can provide 4 times as much power as nuclear fission. In fact, the stuff is so fantastic that it's being proposed as a future power source for spacecraft. There's a catch though. There is very little helium-3 available on the Earth. But there is an abundance on the Moon. How does it work? Potentially, helium-3 could be fused with deuterium in a reactor. This will cause nuclear fusion. How does this work for spaceship engines? The resulting energy release could expel propellant out the back of the spacecraft, causing it to go in a forward motion. In theory, this process could create a lot of power for a very small amount of fuel, which makes this method the most effective known power source for space travel, once scientists and engineers can make it work. This shows that Todd Howard was paying attention in science class and beat the scientists to it, and used it for Starfield. Take that, Elon. Just to finish off, helium-3 makes sense as a long-range fuel source in Starfield, but once our ship runs out, we will likely be stuck in whatever solar system we find ourselves in, forcing us to slowly travel around using pathetic impulse power, searching for our next helium-3 gas station to refuel our ship. Speaking of buying things, building your own spaceship isn't cheap. Just look at those prices. $174,499 to build the ship. Mind you, turns out that this player is some sort of space skooma smuggling tycoon with 1 million space credits. But what if you have fallen on hard times and can't afford to buy your own spaceship? Well, apparently you can just steal ships from the enemy. So, there's that. Enough about building. What about space combat? Space combat. We saw a big chunk of space combat, or dog fighting, in the gameplay footage. But that's not all you can do. As Todd Howard further explained in the after-show interview, there are a number of space-based activities you can participate in. You can shoot enemy ships. You can disable them. You can board them and take over their vessel. You can visit space stations. You can smuggle space skooma out of Neon. And as we have already mentioned, during combat you need to distribute power between your weapons, shields, engines, etc. But you may be wondering, how does one find the time to do this whilst being attacked by space pirates? Well, Todd went on to say that the space combat isn't overly fast-paced. He compared it to MechWarrior, which is a game that I haven't played, so the comparison is lost on me. Anyway, in case the fight isn't going your way, or you just can't be bothered fighting your 10th group of Crimson Fleet pirates today, you can channel all your remaining power into your grav drive and hyperspace jump away, provided you have enough helium-3 reserves. Exploration. Okay, you've escaped the pirates. For now. After flying around for a bit, you notice a cool looking ice ball and want to check out the view of its moons, or build an outpost there, or something. You scan the planet and choose a good looking location to land in, and after a quick cutscene, you enter its atmosphere and make contact with the surface. That's right, Todd confirmed that there will be no space to planet flight, or planet to space flight, like in No Man's Sky. Instead, there will be two separate realities, in space and on the surface. It's true that you can land anywhere on the planet though. Any of the over 1,000 planets distributed amongst the 100 solar systems can be visited and explored. Procedural generation has been used to create the planets, but Starfield boasts the most handcrafted content out of any Bethesda game to date. So some planets will definitely have more going on than others, and not every square inch of these locations will have something to do, as the planets look absolutely enormous. We haven't had any confirmation of land-based vehicles for Starfield yet, but I think that they will be very likely, and we have seen rovers in the Starfield concept art, so here's hoping. What can you do on the planets? Well, you can scan stuff. Plants, animals, and resources. In this image, we notice a structure is highlighted for us in the orbital scan mode. So if we want to check that out, we can. We mentioned we can build outposts. We can fight indigenous creatures. We can scan stuff. Each planet has a gravity level, temperature, atmosphere, and magnetosphere. So yeah, that's that. By the way, this planet looks very close to its star. Like, very close. Like it's about to be sucked into the star's gravitational pull and suffer a fiery demise. Maybe it's not to scale, I don't know. In conclusion, Starfield at its core appears to be a story-driven RPG, with a huge focus on exploration. Lots of exploration. Todd said that they began development of Starfield with two things, the system for planet procedural generation and spaceflight. A large chunk of gameplay will be spent flying around in our spaceship and exploring planets. The rest of the game will be spent trying to sell our smuggled space skooma to the highest bidder. Thanks for watching.